Hi, I'm Kate McDermott, and today I'm going to show you how to roll out a gluten-free pie dough. I have a dough that I made, and the directions for doing this are all in Artofthepie. So this is a very chilly dough, and this is for a double crust pie, so I only need half of it. I'm going to cut down half of it. Put that right there. So I'll have that for the top of my pie. I'm going to roll out as if this were a gluten-free sandwich of dough on plastic wrap with another layer of plastic wrap on top. I will take a little bit of my gluten-free flour mix, and I have another sheet of plastic wrap that I'm going to put right on top. I really like to use the big sheets of plastic wrap. The big wide ones work great. Okay, now I'm going to kind of push down or beat the dough just a little bit so it starts to get an idea of the size and shape that I want it to be. And it is okay if I see cracks on the top of the dough. I just am going to keep rolling over them with enough force that I sort of force them to come back together. If my plastic wrap starts to bunch up on me, I just take a quick moment and smooth it out and continue rolling. I can roll in any direction with gluten-free dough because there's no gluten to be developing. With gluten-full dough, you always want to go out from the center. With gluten-free dough, it doesn't matter. Okay, very close now. I'm going to see what size my dough needs to be. If it's large enough for my particular pie pan, it is. I have enough overhang. So now, how to get this into the pie pan. To take my dough here, I'm going to use a dowel-shaped pin. If I use a pin with ball bearings and do this next step, it's a little harder. So it's not impossible, but I find that I like it with using a dowel. So remember that we call this a gluten-free sandwich with my plastic wrap. I'm going to take both layers of plastic wrap and lift them over the dowel pin. Now, very carefully with my chili dough, I am going to take my plastic wrap and make this little sound when I do it to get it off. If I do this with one big swoop, sometimes your dough can break. That's not a happy moment. Now with my plastic wrap on the top, I'm going to place this, lifting the pin so it's not pushing down on the pan, and I take the plastic wrap and lift it over the top of the pie pan so it just falls over. Now I have that plastic. It is there. If I need to adjust anything, I do. And I still having the plastic wrap on, now I can adjust as I need my dough in the pan. It's in there. This is great. It's so easy. And now I do a little more. There's my dough, my gluten-free dough in my pie pan. I have a little spot here. I want to show you how to fix this if you're worried about that. I would not be, but you might be, and if you are, that's okay. Just take this and patch it. The next step is taking our fruit filling that we've made and turning it into our pie pan and filling it. Be sure and get all that good stuff down at the bottom. Even it out in your pie pan. making sure that it's not mounded like this. If you have a juicy fruit pie mounded up like this, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to be making a clean the oven pie. But this one, when I look at it, now I can see, yeah, that looks pretty good. Some of the pieces are up, but it's not really tall. So there's my full filled pie pan. It's going to be a really good pie. Now I'm going to let this chill while I roll out my second dough. All right, here comes a second pass through so you can see the rolling of the gluten-free dough. One of the reasons that I use the plastic wrap is the dough warms up so fast, it's good to have a layer of filament, of plastic filament, between you and your dough. And I have tried everything, whether it's parchment paper or wax paper, and I have found plastic wrap really works the best for me. It's okay to turn your plastic wrap around if you need to. Press if you need to. Remember, with gluten-free dough, it doesn't matter what direction or how many times you roll over this. Also, one of the beauties about gluten-free dough is that because there's no gluten in here, if it starts to melt, which it can happen, get too hot, and then it's hard to work with, you just gather it all up and put it back into the fridge and roll it out again. Something that you can't do with gluten-full dough. Okay, that looks about the right size for the top of my pie. And now I'm going to go get my pie, and then we'll put this on the top. It's in the fridge. I'll be back in just a second. Here's my pie. I'll place it over here, nicely chilled. If you want to, you can always add some dotting of butter on here. I would say I forget that 95% of the time, which I did today too. Not a worry at all about that. Okay, here we go. We're going to put our dowel pin, both sheets of plastic wrap, making sure that they're nice and straight on there. Fold it over and do our little ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. And the same thing on this side. Ch-ch-ch. I'm going to take I'll do it this way so you can see coming this way as I do this. Taking this, lifting so it's not laying down on there. It's sort of partially lifted, and then just flip this over. If I need to adjust it, I can do that very easily. Now I'm going to loosen my plastic wrap off of here. It is okay if a little piece of dough comes off of it. Maybe I'd like to put that over here. Maybe I'd like to put that here. I see a little place where needs a little patching there. Okay. And now I'm going to finish my edges on here. So I'm just going to securely press those together with the plastic wrap in place. I'm pressing both the front layer, the top layer, and the bottom layer, folding it under just a little bit, turning my work as I go. If it's easier for you when you're doing this to have this on this side facing you so you can see, by all means that's what you should do. Whatever way feels the easiest for you. My plastic wrap is just the bomb. Makes it so easy to work with a gluten-free dough so it doesn't warm up and break apart. If at any time your dough starts to feel like it's getting a little tired, a little warm, you just pop it in the fridge. Now this looks a little shaggy, but we're not done yet. So I'm going to now sort of skim off any of my extra. Okay. And I can crimp this also, or I can do fluting. So let me take some of this out of the way, and I'll show you how to do a quick and easy little edge with fluting on here. I still use my plastic wrap. Just like you would for any edge of a pie that's gluten full, you're going to do the same thing here. Just make sure there's enough material there, and then you flute your edge just like you would for a regular pie. And that plastic wrap allows me to get a lot of control. I think it looks pretty good. Let's see if it stays that way all around the pie. Okay, so now I have a gluten-free pie with a fluted edge, but I need a vent. So what I do on my gluten-free pies, I put a little circle in the center, and for me, that lets me know that this pie is gluten-free, because I do a different vent on my gluten-full pies. This is a completed pie. The last steps before we bake it is it needs to chill again. And then I'll join you back here, and we'll put a little egg white wash on here and sprinkle some sugar on and pop it in the oven. So here we go. I've taken my pie out of the fridge. It took about 15 minutes for my oven to preheat, so that was a good chill time for my pie to get the fats back up to temperature. Now I'm going to give them an egg yolk wash. Every wash has a different characteristic, and I use egg yolk and a little water on my gluten-free pies so that it gives it a little more color. And the last step is to give it a little sprinkling of sugar. This is a nifty little thing to use so that you get an even sprinkling of sugar on your pie. Remember too that the highest part of your pie is where it's going to brown the most. So I want to put a very small amount, if even any, around my highest edges. If I was making a pie that was a big mounded up apple pie, which is the pie that I do mound up along with pear, but if I mounded up one of those, I would put the least amount of sugar in the center where it's high and more around the edges. So just use a little common sense on there. This pie is now ready to go into the oven, and we'll see it in about an hour. I've preheated my oven to 425 Fahrenheit. My chilled pie will go in first at that temperature and bake for 20 minutes. Then I will turn it down to 375 Fahrenheit and continue baking for 35 to 40 minutes more until I see some steady bubbling coming out of that vent. That's how I know it's done. Oh yeah.